Hello, hello. Good evening. Test your mic.
Hello?
All right, there we go. Um, and then what? Uh, and then what is the title of a song by Jeezy off of the Let's Get It Thug Motivation 101 masterpiece, if you will. Um, but the chorus of this song goes, first, I'm gonna stack my flow, and then what? Then I'm gonna stack some more, and then what? And then what? It's a call and response moment between Jeezy and Manny Fresh where there's this level of anticipation of the next thing that has to happen or the next thing that will happen. And as I think about the notion of and then what, I think about this imagination of thinking about the future of what we're about to do, regardless of whether you may be navigating difficult or calm circumstances. So, in thinking about this conversation with you, Adela, I wanted to highlight the Trap Music Museum as a place of cultural preservation, but also as a place of imagination to think about that level of and then what for the culture and for that space in general. So, um, tell all of us about the Trap Music Museum.
Hi, guys. Well, the Trap Music Museum is an interactive experience that uses art, installations, and set designs to highlight or showcase the rich culture of trap music. And yeah, and we celebrate the trap artists, rap artists, some of the biggest ones in the world today. And we also give a space for emerging artists to showcase artwork, set designers, and creatives. And it's just kind of like a creative hub that really talks about trap culture and trap music, which is one of the biggest genres in the music industry today all over the world.
Close shop, then I do my count, hide the rest of the yams at my auntie house. And then what? Going back to that notion of imagination and activation, you talk about trap music and the Trap Music Museum as this place of providing a lot of cultural acknowledgement and documentation of the artists that have really made Atlanta, culturally speaking, a relevant place, I would say in the last 15 to 25 years. Trap music is not the first generation of Atlanta hip hop, but it is definitely a very important one. But I really want to ask those of us here to consider what the trap actually is. Whatever you may think of the music, think about the spaces where someone like a Jeezy is coming from, a T.I. or Tip Harris is coming from, a Gucci Mane is coming from. And take away the music and think about the actual space. The trap is not a space that exists by happenstance. The trap is in many ways a combination of policy choices, education policy, economic policy, food policy, transit policy. And so when you get all of those things converging, you get spaces like what we call or have called the trap. So in considering all those policy decisions, one of the things I wanted to ask you about is that notion of and then what? Because we have gotten to a place where the culture is lucrative, it is successful, it is influential, but when you consider where it came from, what is that bridge between the success of the culture and then tying resources back to those spaces where it came from? that level of and then whatness. So I wanted to get you
Right.
to like talk about that.
Right. You mean in terms of where we are headed with our messaging at the museum and then kind of like trickling throughout the community?
Exactly.
Well, I think what a lot of people, when they hear about the Trap Music Museum, I think a misconception they have is that we highlight violence and drugs and whatnot. But really what it is highlighting is everything that you just said, and it's bringing it on Front Street. It's unapologetically telling the story of trap culture. Like food deserts, like you said, gentrification, alcohol abuse, drug abuse. It talks about all of that. It kind of feeds those realities to us with a spoonful of sugar, right? Through art and creativity, which is one of the best tools to teach people about everything. I'll say with us, we were only supposed to be a pop-up, and that was only supposed to last about 3 months. And we have lines wrapped around the building, so we definitely, like I've said before, have a message that people want to hear. And I think going into our 5th year this year, and hip hop is 50 this year as well, for us, I think moving into more like unpacking it all and the layers of really what's going on in the community. We're partnering with different companies and organizations such as Grady Trauma Center, which you kind of did that hookup for us. Thank you so much. The Science Gallery as well, and just kind of initiatives that focus on mental health, what we like to call as mental wealth, because we want to transform that. Just talking about those difficult conversations in our community that have to be talked about. And I think because of us being the Trap Music Museum, we have a great platform to where we can put those issues on Front Street and have an ear, a youthful ear, as well as, a creative ear, and people who, such as our age, grew up with, Outkast and, hip hop and whatnot. And I think we just have a great platform to like highlight those issues.
Hip hop turns 50. You just mentioned that this year. And when you have a culture, more than just a genre, but when a culture turns 50, that means you really have a few different generations of people who say they belong to that generation or who say they belong to that culture. Mm-hmm. So I'm wondering, at the Trap Music Museum, can you talk about the multiple generations of people who come to that space and who are sharing and are connecting with what you all are doing in that space?
I mean, from people who are 50 years old to kids, trap music, kids who are, and we open the door to teenagers to come in and experience the creativity, to kids who are 14, 15. So it ranges really wide. I remember speaking to, I think her name's Essa, she's from Adama, and she was talking about, you were talking to her about it, talking about how overseas, once you hit a certain age, you can't be hip hop anymore. And for us, we just don't even understand that. Isn't that a luxury that we just don't even understand that? And that's kind of what that means to me. Like, everybody, like, it is like one of the biggest genres in the world. We never thought that it would be that. And for trap music to be one of the first of its kind, and it won't be its last. We have the Dolph Museum traveling right now, a huge success. I just think that the hip hop story and the story of trap, and then which is the story of us and our community, is something that's just now really being unpacked. I don't care how old, a hip hop song is, it really is just being unpacked to the level to where it's being studied at high Ivy League colleges. Do you get what I'm saying? Because it's society, social justice.
And so,
I don't know if that answers
no,
your
no,
question.
we're good. I think that what you have articulated is that now that the culture has been solidified in that space of documentation, now folks are coming to that space to relearn what they thought they learned in other contexts. They're now coming to learn it through this cultural lens. And now there's, I think, multiple layers of that actually happening. I think when people find out that someone is managing the curatorial vision of the Trap Music Museum, they may be surprised to know that someone is actually doing that and thinking about those types of creative labor, right? So I wonder if you could just maybe speak to our audience here about what it is that you actually do at the Trap Music Museum, because I think people may not think the music is so wide-ranging.
Forefront on
right.
it,
So,
yeah.
so from an art standpoint, though, what do you do?
Well, I'm an art curator, and I deal with I source mostly visual artists, creatives. I am the artist relations manager, so I'm the person that initially speaks to artists, but we do have a full-on creative team. Trap Music Museum was made from a group of people that also worked with Grand Hustle, so they were already creatives. So we all sit in a room and we try to think creatively how we can, connect and create amazing experiences, and how we can continue this, which was only supposed to be a pop-up. So from creative directors to, art directors, marketing, it's all a team effort. But for me specifically, I take my marching orders, but at the same time, it's so amazing to be in a space to where people value what you have to bring to the table creatively, and working with the visual artists is just a joy. Yeah, I don't know if that answered your question.
It's perfectly answers my question.
Yeah. But I also try to put together, within our 5th year, more partnerships. Like working with Moda Museum. We're in Moda Museum with the exhibit they have, the architecture of hip hop. So we want to partner with more museums and more, established creative and art spaces like that.
Well, I think when we go back to that notion of motivation and imagination and thinking about this future forward idea of what the culture is, I think the Trap Music Museum provides a bridge to that. I think that while the music is still being made and artists are still being celebrated in that type of way, I feel like you all are fostering those relationships to then serve the people, whether it be the mental wellness events that you all have been having, or inviting the Morehouse students over there. I think there's just been an increased amplification of how this music resonates, and then how do you get people to sort of see different ways in it. But I think that isn't always talked about.
Yeah, for sure. And one other thing that I do as a curator is that I have to continue the story that Trap Music Museum is telling. I have to, as a curator, make sure that I'm authentic to that story. And now with us doing solo art shows, we can expound on not just the hip hop part of trap culture. We can also expound on gentrification and, solo art shows like solo art shows like John Pierre, who just, did a show there. Icart Pierre, I'm so sorry. But so just kind of expanding on the story, because the story is really yet to be told, to be honest with you.
So in conclusion, one of the things I really want people to take away from this is, at least the way that I receive the work that's been done in your space, is that the Trap Music Museum is a documentation of what we've been through. It may look or it may sound, more importantly, different than what we expect, but all of the seriousness that we see in the world today is being articulated through that medium. And then when you think about, well, how do we change some of those things? I think the music will also be a place where some of those things will get changed, and we just have to be able to realize it, that beyond what the label trap says, I think really it's the humanity that is actually in it, because people are still living and loving and trying to find a better way to have, better lives and better outcomes. So I think that the work that you all are doing is actually, this ongoing documentation work of what we're doing.
Right, exactly. Yeah, like I was saying, just continuing to tell the story, because everybody is having, not everybody, but there's a lot of kids in low-income communities that are reliving that story. A lot has changed, but a lot has not really changed, if you really look at it. It's just kind of covered up a little bit with some diamonds and, foreign cars and whatnot here and there. But there's parts of Atlanta you can ride through and, it's still happening. It's still kids growing up in the trap. The trap is still there. The trap ain't gone nowhere. We're a museum and museums usually talk about the past, but we're like really talking about what's going on right now. Creative programs being taken away from, schools and things of that sort. So, yeah, we're just continuing to tell the story. The story is still there, and the story is being relived and reborn and retold and things of that sort. People are still trying to survive the trap.